Welcome to The Real World. My name is Cameron. Today on episode 76 of The Real World podcast, we are talking about our favorite underwater movies. Thank you for joining us here on The Real World. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a movie fan, you're in the right place. We're all about physical media. All that stuff on the shelves behind me, those are all movies. So we're big into physical media. We're big into movies in the theater as well. The theater going experience is essential to us. Today on the podcast, we're talking about our favorite films set underwater. So this should be a lot of fun. Join us for the conversation. Let us know your favorites in the comments below. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. Let's kick things off as we usually do with some movie news. This week in movie news, James Gunn announced that Superman Legacy is about to start filming. They have cast the film. They're doing costume tests, screen tests, production design meetings, scouting locations. It is ready to get underway. A lot of people are very excited for this new iteration of the character on screen and the new DC universe, which is the shared continuity of films based on DC Comics. Very excited to see what they do with this. The casting so far looks great, so I'm really excited to see how it turns out. The other bit of movie news that dropped this week is that Jack Black will star as Steve in the live-action Minecraft movie. Minecraft, of course, is a hugely popular video game that has been in development for a while as a film. Jason Momoa is also attached to star. We're not sure if he's going to play the villain or what exactly his role will be, but now Jack Black has been added to the cast. I think this is a great addition. He's such a great actor, comedic actor, has a lot of dramatic chops as well that he's been able to show off in the past. So just an excellent addition to any movie, really, but especially this Minecraft movie. Go check out his YouTube channel, Jablinski Games, where he's gotten big into video games lately, and you'll have a lot of fun. All right, folks, well, that is it for movie news. Now it is time for our main topic, which is underwater movies, movies that take place under the water primarily. Joining me on this episode, he's back after the holiday break. It's Bert. How you doing, man?
Hey, Cam, glad to be back. Good to see you.
Yes, you too. Glad to be back in the podcast with this cool topic that you came up with. You've been wanting to do this one for a while. I thought it was a great idea. We did movies that were above the water, primarily movies, on the surface of the water, boat movies, nautical films, whatever you want to call it, a while ago. And so we've had this idea for a bit. And this was a great time to do it because a couple movies came out recently, actually, that do have to do with water. One is called Night Swim that just came out, so it's a horror film. And the other one is called The Boys in the Boat, which my brother Carson and I got to go see just this weekend, and it was fantastic. Highly recommend that. Go check out our reaction and our review on the channel right now. So let's jump in and talk about why underwater movies. Again, because those movies just came out, it was kind of a relevant topic, one that we've been wanting to
Aquaman
do for a
2.
while. Aquaman, of course, yes, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is now in theaters
Yeah.
too. So yeah, people are definitely talking about that, the final DCEU movie. That was kind of the why. And then I guess we should talk about how we went about creating these lists because there's really not a ton of movies that take place exclusively underwater,
Right,
And
right.
so what I had to do with mine, and I'm sure yours was much the same way, is try to figure out which movies that were kind of focused on the other underwater elements, even though that may not be where the entire movie is set. So that's kind of how I went into it. I kind of just thought about what movies do I think of when I think of underwater movies and kind of try to narrow it down to my five favorites of those. So a lot of submarine films obviously are going to be here. All kinds of different types of movies though made my list. So is that kind of how you were thinking about it?
Somewhat. Yeah, and like you said, it's a very specific subgenre because unlike say if you were gonna talk about comedies or something, you'd say, well, why don't we, just boil it down to this because there's so many, but there's not really so many underwater movies.
Right.
Or at least where most of it takes place underwater. I mean, there's a lot of films where they might have one scene, like The Rock. There's a scene where they swim underwater to get to
Yeah.
it, and that kind
Sure.
of thing.
Yeah.
But so I essentially I did try to I basically only picked movies where the majority of the time they are underwater in some capacity, and
Right.
that was really my primary uh thing I looked at.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're pretty much on the same page there. So, okay. Well, I guess it's time to jump into our honorable mentions. Let's do that now. All right, so I do have some honorable mentions here that I wanted to discuss briefly. One of them I couldn't go without mentioning because my daughters would not be very happy. It's The Little Mermaid. Of course, The Little Mermaid is a classic Disney animated film. I grew up watching, my children have grown up watching, and it mostly does take place underwater because she's a mermaid, so that's where she lives. And this, of course, just got a live action remake, which I didn't think was as good as the original, which they rarely are in my opinion, but still worth watching if you're into those types of movies. That started off what's called the Disney Renaissance of the late 80s, early 90s, where they kind of had a resurgence in popularity and great storytelling in their animated films. So had to mention that one. Another one I wanted to mention was a John Wayne film, which is a submarine World War II film called Operation Pacific. So Operation Pacific was made back in the 50s, and it stars, of course, John Wayne, also Patricia Neal, and it's a really solid submarine movie, especially if you're into World War II films. Highly recommend it. He did another one that was similar, but it was about aviation. He was a pilot, and that one's called Flying Leathernecks. Both are really well worth watching. So I just wanted to bring that one up briefly. Then, of course, we have sticking with the 50s, but this one's more of a sci-fi kind of horror thing. It Came from Beneath the Sea. This is one of these fun kind of sci-fi B movies of the 50s that had some really kind of fun effects. You know, if you're into that, it's this was part of a box set for Ray Harryhausen, who's known for his stop motion effects. And he
Yeah.
did a great job with this. All the effects in this are really fun to watch, and it's a really kind of quick, easy to watch movie that I would definitely recommend if you're into those types of films. Then I wanted to mention Marvel's Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which does have a kind of subplot with Namor, who's a character who lives underwater,
Hmm.
has this whole underwater kingdom. We don't get to spend a ton of time there, which is the only reason it
Yeah.
really didn't make the list. It's interesting, though, I think what they did with all that. I thought it looked pretty neat. And then I wanted to mention Studio Ghibli, Japanese studio, did kind of their own version of Little Mermaid called Ponyo. It's a
Oh, I've
really
heard of that.
good, yeah, really good
Yeah.
animated movie, well worth watching for the whole family. Liam Neeson does a voice in it. It's got a really good American voice cast. The dub is great on it. So that's one I would definitely recommend as well. And so that's it for now. I've got a few more, but Bert, why don't you give us a couple of your honorable mentions?
Yeah, sure. I'll throw out also Finding Nemo as
Mm,
a solid animated film that obviously is mostly underwater. It's one we've seen many times.
yep,
Great animation in that. And then I also wanted to also point out the Poseidon Adventure films. Well, what I mean is the original from
sure.
1973, which I mean it's technically underwater because the boat, flipped.
Flips, right.
I guess I mean honestly though, if you're in a boat that's on the water and you go far enough into the lower section of the boat, technically you're underwater then too. But so I
True.
don't want to get too technical about it. But anyway, if you count Poseidon Adventure as underwater, obviously the original is a lot of fun, and
Yep.
the remake too is decent.
Okay.
I think it's just called Poseidon. So I
Right.
had to throw those two out there. And I want to mention too, there's also a couple twin films that are
Mm.
underwater films. Leviathan and Deep Star Six both came
Oh
out in
yeah.
1989. Neither are particularly good. I actually rewatched both of them, so
Okay.
they're not an honorable like recommend.
Right,
But I
right.
just had to kind of point out that there are twin films in this sort of subgenre too.
Yeah, I saw your reviews on Letterboxd for those.
Oh,
Were not too hot, so I
yeah,
skipped them. But
gotcha.
yeah, great. We're both on Letterboxd, so if you guys are on Letterboxd, check us out. Those links are in the description below. All right, I'm gonna run down the rest of mine quickly here. Ron Howard's 13 Lives, which I didn't think was enough underwater to quite make the cut,
Yeah, me too. Me
but
too.
there's significant portion sequences that are
Hmm.
underwater in these caves. So thought I would at least mention that one. A great movie. It's
It's a
on
great
Amazon
movie.
Prime.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did a whole review of that when it came out a couple years ago. Then we have Avatar: The Way of Water, which I did consider because there's quite a bit of it underwater. Again, I didn't know if there was quite enough though to make it
Yeah.
consider it a full underwater movie.
Right.
It's a lot
Right.
of it's on the water. There's some under, but anyways, that was one. And then of course James Cameron's The Abyss, which is fantastic. And then you have Crimson Tide, we've mentioned on the podcast before, which is one that I really need to rewatch. because it probably would have made my list if I had been able to watch it again, because I remember it very fondly, and I know you do as well. There's an underrated one, which is all in a sub called Black Sea. Have you heard of this? With
No,
Jude Law.
really.
It
Oh,
came out in 2014, I think, and I'm
okay.
pretty sure you can stream it on Netflix or somewhere. I watched this for the first time just
Oh,
a year or two ago, and was really impressed. Really
hmm.
impressed with it. It's a kind of a pirate movie, like a modern day
Mhm.
pirate movie. They're kind of treasure hunters, and the crew, and they don't really get along. Like the crew, there's a lot of infighting and stuff. So it's a really
Yeah.
well-made movie that just not a lot of people have heard of, unfortunately. But I think it's definitely worth a watch. And then the last one I have here, the one that was closest to making it. This is a movie I really enjoyed. It just came out a couple years ago. It stars Kristen Stewart. It's called Underwater. That's the title. And the whole movie is underwater. They're like on the floor of the ocean. It's in the not too distant future. They're like mining for something under there, and then all this weird stuff starts happening. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of a horror movie. It's really well made, really well shot and edited. The performances are really good. It just has a great look and feel to it. And it's another one that not a lot of people have heard of, unfortunately. I don't know. It kind of came
Yeah.
and went, didn't make a lot of money, but definitely worth checking out. It's one. Have you seen that one? Because I think you'd
I
like it.
have seen that one.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's all right. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. Great. All right.
Oh, I did have one more I needed to mention.
Oh,
I completely,
yes. Sure. Go
yeah,
ahead.
because this barely didn't make my top five.
Yeah.
And that's a movie called 47 Meters Down.
Oh,
And I gotta say, this is kind of more of a guilty pleasure kind of film. It's not like, the most quality script and all this kind of stuff. Have you
okay.
seen this movie?
I have not. I've heard of it though. They've
Okay.
made sequels,
Yeah.
I think, too.
At least one. Yeah. And in
Yeah.
fact, I watched the second one. It wasn't, it was a very different kind of movie and it wasn't as good.
Okay.
But this is one I've actually seen a couple times. I saw it in the theater actually,
Oh,
and then followed up again. But it's one of those kind of nail biters where these two young ladies are in one of those shark cages so they can view the sharks, and then
right.
it gets dislodged from the boat, and it
Oh,
sinks down 47 meters, and then it's
oh,
kind of them versus the sharks, and it's like a survival story.
okay.
And so, like I said, it's more of just a
Interesting.
guilty pleasure kind of thing, but I really like it.
Yeah.
It's very well paced. Like all the things that
Right.
they have to sort of overcome are well spaced so that it doesn't feel like it's too long. And it's only about a 90-minute film, but
Okay.
I had to mention 47 Meters Down.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad you did. Excellent. Okay, cool. All right, folks. Well, it's time to jump in now to our top five favorite films set underwater. Kind of a tough list to make, but it was a lot of fun to go through, and I got to rewatch a lot of these movies this week. And so we're going to kick things off. Bert, do you want to start us off with your number five?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, go right ahead.
Uh, Another guilty pleasure here. Honestly, I can't say that this movie's better than like The Hunt for Red October or some of these, terrifically made, uh, films by these, esteemed directors. But it's just for just entertainment value. I mean, these end up getting higher on the list. So at five, I've got The Meg, and
Okay.
yeah, it's one I've
Okay.
already seen a couple times now.
Yeah.
It's not really that scary, and it is a bit campy, but not too bad. It's
Mm.
like I heard a lot about this Cocaine Bear movie,
Nice.
and honestly, once the bear made an appearance, I'm like, no, 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 I'm not into this. Like so bad that it's good. Like
Right.
I mean, maybe if I'm in a certain mood, but
Yeah.
so the Meg is not that. It
Hmm.
tries to be a little more serious. And
Hmm.
there's some decent humor. Rainn Wilson is kind of the comic relief in it. But honestly, I think it's actually got really good production value.
Mm.
And it's not scary really at all
Right.
necessarily, but I just think it looks great, and I just think it's just a lot of fun for a shark movie. So yeah, I had to put the Meg in this one. I'll probably watch a few times in the future too. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that one. I watched it
I
and
know.
it just didn't hit me. I just
Gotcha.
I couldn't put my finger on the tone, like, because
Okay.
you're saying it's got comedy and it
Yeah.
tries to be kind of light and silly, but then it kind of does get really serious too. So
Uh-huh.
for me, there was just kind of some whiplash. Like I wasn't really sure
I
what they were
agree.
going for exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are some fun moments, certainly. There are some really cool visuals.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
effects are really solid all the way through it.
Right.
Jason
Right.
Statham, he's just to me he's almost like unintentionally funny sometimes because he's so serious and so angry in every
Right. Right.
scene. But yeah, so I didn't get a whole lot out of it. I didn't hate
Mm,
it, you know. It's not one of those movies that I just, totally disliked, but it's not one that I've desired to revisit at all.
I
So
see.
yeah, but I'm glad it made your list because I'm sure
Yeah,
that I know there's a lot of people that really like both of them. Actually, there's a sequel out now. So
right. Yeah. Second one's not quite as good.
right.
It's got one of those sort of like underwater labs or rigs,
Yes.
and a
Right.
lot of these movies have that, right? And a
Right.
lot, and they all look completely different from one another.
Hmm.
And so I really like this one. It's very like tech centric,
Yeah.
as opposed to some that are more gritty,
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the Meg.
Excellent. Okay. So that was your five. My number five is my little buddy right here, Finding Nemo.
Oh
There
yeah,
he
yeah,
is. Nemo. Yeah, we love this movie. This movie is one of those just perfect family movies that
yeah.
I feel like you can watch and you kind of just never get tired of it. I remember my brother growing up. This came out the year he was born, 2003, and we just watched it over and over and over again. So I kind of left it behind for a while until I had children of my own. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
revisiting it was a lot of fun because I had
Mhm.
forgotten how clever it was, how funny.
Yeah.
The cast is great. Albert Brooks, Ellen DeGeneres, they all do a great job. The whole Tank Gang, and we've got Willem Dafoe in there, Jeffrey Rush. It's just a great cast
Yeah.
of actors doing a great job in all these roles. It's like 100 minutes long, so it's a
Mhm.
perfect runtime.
Yeah.
The budget on it I found out was 94 million. It ended up grossing over 940 million. So it was a huge hit. I also
Yeah.
found out it's the best-selling DVD of all time, with over 40 million units sold,
Wow.
which is pretty crazy. Made American Film Institute's top 10 animated movies ever. Thomas Newman's score was nominated for Best Score of the
Mm.
Year.
Yeah.
So just a great movie all around. It has some excitement. Like I said, it has some hilarious moments. It's very emotionally satisfying. The ending is just great. The whole father-son dynamic and, the whole idea of overprotective parents, which, I think we can relate to. But it's great. It's beautiful visuals. As you mentioned before, the animation is just stunning. I mean, it holds up
Mhm.
so well. The detail, when you watch it in high def, you see the detail of the scales on the fish. Like,
Hmm.
stuff I'd never noticed before. That's just amazing. Amazing. What the animators did was really incredible. So, yeah, it's one that's just a joy to watch anytime we put it on.
Thoughts on Finding Dory?
Not as big a fan of Finding Dory. I just didn't
Yeah.
feel like it
Yeah.
was necessary. I didn't feel like they really had the story. There's some
Yeah.
moments I like, there's some characters I like, but yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment, honestly.
It's a bit depressing, or at least that was my
It kind of
memory.
is. Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
But yeah, Andrew Stanton directed Nemo, and he directed Finding Dory. He's done some really great movies,
Mm.
including Wall-E, which is my favorite Pixar movie. He's a really good storyteller, really good director. All right, let's move on to number four. Bert, what do you got at number four?
Well, I was being a little bit coy, but I have Underwater, the film
Oh, really?
Underwater from
Oh, okay,
2020.
okay, gotcha. I was like, why isn't he talking about this? Okay, cool, cool,
I
yeah,
yeah, I had nothing to say about it
right.
after I saw it. Yeah, this took me by surprise. Some
Mm,
of these that do come and go, and you're kind of got low expectations, right? Because
right,
you're like, I
yes,
don't know anybody that's seen this, but I'm watching underwater films, so we're watching this film.
sure.
And I was quite impressed in a lot of ways. And you alluded to it being a horror film. It's basically like a horror survival film. That
Right. It reminded me a lot
opens.
of the original Alien.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Has that
sure,
kind of
yeah,
vibe.
like Poseidon Adventure crossed with Alien, maybe
Right.
a lot of different hints of other movies from the past, I guess.
Sure, sure.
And honestly, it's a lot. What they do in the film, they take on kind of a little bit too much, especially for the runtime, because this is kind of a shorter film.
Right.
And I want to mention too, TJ Miller is pretty funny in here. I was cracking up quite a bit at him. This is, I guess, pre-scandal or whatever. Wasn't there
Right.
some scandal? I don't know. I don't,
Yeah.
can't keep up with it. And the film has pretty good CGI. There's really good creature design, I felt.
Mm,
Um,
hmm.
so I just really felt like it needed a longer cut
Mm,
to kind of, because a lot of the scenes or the ideas that they had were sort of undercooked,
mm.
and I felt
Sure.
like they moved on to the next sort of segment, and I'm like, I really would have liked to see more of that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't buy the Blu-ray. I think I'm going to pick it up at some point, but there are some deleted scenes on there,
Oh,
and
okay.
I wonder if that would make it more rounded out
Yeah.
And had this money actually been profitable, they, there might have been like a director's cut or
Right.
something like that. But I kind of got the same feeling as I did with Rebel Moon, which is
Yeah.
that great ideas. I just
Right.
feel like, and the thing is, like, I'm often critical when I feel like a movie's too long
Yeah. Right.
because I don't have.
Exactly.
Sometimes I feel like I have a really short attention span. But then there's
Right.
movies like this where I'm like, I feel like it needed to tell me more, so they could
Yeah.
round it out better.
Right, sure. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that for sure. I think maybe the filmmakers and the studios try to err on the side of a shorter runtime to get more people to see it.
Absolutely, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think, yeah, people see longer runtimes, they kind of turns them off a little bit. So
Hmm.
I think they t tend to err on the side of a shorter runtime, a tighter film that will reach a
Absolutely.
wider audience, and then hopefully, in the future they can do a director's cut like they're doing with Rebel Moon, which will add a whole hour of footage, which I'm sure will
Right.
fix probably all the problems that
Hopefully.
we have with that movie. Yeah, but yeah, Underwater is great. I'm glad you have it in your list. Like I said, it was very close to me in my list because I just was really impressed by it. Like you said, no expectations, I think, has a lot to do with that going in. You're kind of just like, okay, what is this? And then if they deliver, a satisfying movie, then you kind of are like, whoa, that was good. So yeah, glad it made your cut.
Yeah, 4 stars for me on that one.
Excellent. All right, we're on to my number four. My number four is a film that is based on a true story. This is K-19, The Widowmaker.
Hmm.
This is a film that came out back in 2002, and it stars Liam Neeson and Harrison Ford as real-life submarine captains back in the 1960s, 1961, back during the Cold War. Tensions are high between Russia and the United States, and they're building nuclear submarines. And so they are the first out there in the open seas with this experimental weapon, essentially that they're riding inside this metal tube underwater, and they just do a great job telling the story. Catherine Bigelow is the director of this. She's a fantastic director. She's done stuff like The Hurt Locker and Point Break, a lot of movies that I really like. And the cast again is great. Ford and Neeson, they're such great veteran actors that I feel like seeing them pitted against each other is just like an all-time great movie thing, like one of those acting pairs that you kind of I would have never really thought to put those two together. I don't know why, for what reason, but seeing them together is just really cool. And they're butting heads a lot, so it's kind of intense. Their scenes are pretty intense throughout the movie, but they just do a great job acting. The Blu-ray I have here has a commentary with Catherine Bigelow and the director of photography. His name is Jeffrey Cronenweth, and man, they just really went into detail on the movie, the way it was shot, the way it was edited. It's mostly in a real sub that they're shooting in.
Oh, is that right?
They went
That's neat.
and yeah, they did a lot of shots in the real sub. Went to Russia to shoot a lot of the outdoor scenes, which there aren't a ton of, but this is definitely an underwater movie because the vast majority of it is in the sub underwater.
Hmm.
And of course, what ends up happening, I won't spoil it, even though it's based on a true story, I won't spoil what exactly happens, but things go wrong, terribly wrong in this movie. And it's quite harrowing, realizing that, these are real guys, that makes it just 10 times more kind of intense and puts you on the edge of your seat. And so it's just a really well-made movie, top to bottom, the way it's shot, the way it's edited, the music, the acting, of course, is fantastic. Unfortunately, it didn't do very well. It had a $90 million budget, only grossed 65 million. So it definitely lost money. Was I don't know why. I don't know if it was the release date. It was released in July of 2002. Maybe there was a lot of competition in that summer. Or what was I don't know. I don't know what exactly happened, but it's one that I've actually enjoyed a number of times on Blu-ray. I'm really glad to have it and to have watched it multiple times. Have you seen this one, Bert?
I just watched it for the first time, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I thought it was decent.
Okay.
I expected it to be more intense, I guess, and I felt
Mm,
like dramatically it was fine. Maybe
hmm.
a little dry at times, pun
Yeah.
intended. Um, but and not to be too picky, but like these are tough because so they're all Russians, right? So
Right.
if you want to do it like Chris Nolan or maybe Spielberg style, you could have them all speak in Russian and have subtitles. And then
Right.
now it's feeling very realistic. I maybe almost would have preferred that
Mm.
over the accents, because the
Accents,
accents
right.
come and go. And
Sure.
the thing is, that's fine. Like, I don't even like to read subtitles, so I
Right.
don't necessarily mind when it's dubbed, but if it's distracting me, then
Mm.
that's kind of a problem. And it was a bit distracting, but
Okay.
it's a fine film. Like, I think I gave it 2.5, 3 stars. I haven't put my review up yet, but
Okay.
it's decent. Like, I'd watch it
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
This is one of those true stories that I do feel like they should have tightened the runtime a little because it's 2 hours, 18 minutes.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel like it
yeah.
also, if it had been tightened up a little bit, it would
Uh-huh.
have helped the film a lot. But no, I have it at four
Mhm.
stars. I think
Okay.
it's really well made. And so yeah, that's where I landed with that one. That's my number four.
Yeah, nice.
All right, so that's my number four. Bert, what do you have at number three?
At three, I have Sphere.
Oh, I haven't seen this.
Oh, you haven't seen Sphere?
No, I
Oh,
really
shoot.
want to
Okay.
though. I've heard it's
All
pretty
right. Well,
good.
I won't give anything away. Yeah.
Okay.
But directed by Kurt Wimmer,
Okay.
who has done some films I really like,
Mm.
Equilibrium, Total Recall, a bunch of others actually.
Hmm.
He's actually one of my favorite directors. And this was sort of his first big movie. It was, I think, his second movie, but
Mm.
the first one with like a budget and obviously with some pretty big actors in it.
Mm. Hmm.
Definitely for the time.
Yeah.
Just a brief description: a spacecraft presumed to be alien is discovered on the Pacific Ocean floor, and so you got these. It's not one of these where they have to bring in the team of experts, right? They fly them all in, like we've seen in
Right.
so many
Oh
movies,
yeah.
right? So you
Sure.
got a biologist who's played by Sharon Stone, a mathematician played by Samuel Jackson, an astrophysicist played by Liev Schreiber,
Mm.
and then a psychologist played by Dustin Hoffman, and there's
Mm.
even Peter Coyote. He's
Oh,
a Navy captain that's part of the crew. It's kind of a
cool.
small cast actually.
Yeah, good cast.
Yeah, and so they're brought in, and then they're taken underwater, and this one of these habitats where like I was saying before, in underwater in a lot of these films,
Mm.
they've got sort of this underwater habitat, and so they have to then go out to this ship and come back and see what's in it. And one of the things they find is this sphere, and so that's about all I'll say about it. But
Okay.
it's really a great. It's one of those really tight and clever scripts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really like the tone of the film. It's more serious, but there
Okay.
is a little bit of I guess you could say silly moments. But I think they really nail the tone because that's
Okay.
a bit tricky to pull off,
Right.
right?
Right.
And but really, there's some truly kind of creepy moments
Mm.
that happen. And the CGI doesn't push too much. It's
Mm.
got a really great score, Elliot Goldenthal,
Okay.
and it's just like we've seen this before in a lot of ways, especially like in space, where
Mm.
there's this abandoned ship and they got to go out and find it and see who's on it or who's alive or what aliens are there, whatever.
Right. Right.
So that concept's been done, but I feel like with this sphere, it's definitely a unique concept with what happens. And it's
Yeah.
definitely more of a psychological horror, but yeah, I'd
Mm.
really recommend it. It's one I've seen a few times over the years.
Okay.
It's at least a 4-star film for me.
Great. Great. Yeah, I'll definitely be seeking that one out to watch soon. Cool. Well, let's jump into my number three. My number three is an animated film from Disney, Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
Mm.
This came out in June of 2001, and it stars Michael J. Fox as Milo Thatch, who's a kind of a bumbling, kind of nerdy explorer, who a wannabe explorer, I should say. And he finally gets the chance of a lifetime to go and explore Atlantis, who, of course, everyone thinks he's crazy. He, believes it exists. And so he gets to lead this expedition to the titular Lost Empire. It's got a great, supporting cast, including James Garner and Cree Summer and Leonard Nimoy. Only an hour and 36-minute runtime, $120 million budget. So it was a big budget. They put a lot of effort into this. This was the early days of, blending 2D and 3D CG animation,
Mm.
and they do it really well here. So it had a big budget. Unfortunately, it only made about 186 million, so it was considered a massive flop when it came out. But it's just got a great design, all the character designs, all the ships and vehicles. It's got that steampunk aesthetic, which I think
Oh,
is really cool.
nice. Yeah.
It's really, really a neat looking movie. Very fun, very funny. Again, a great kind of mix of characters. The whole crew that goes on this adventure together are a lot of fun. Very distinct personalities and voices. So it's one of those cool kind of fantasy sci-fi films that has a lot of cool action in it. Just a great story, all about exploration and discovery and kind of a hero's journey. And again, the animation is just really, really great. Great visuals here. It's all animated in the widescreen format, so it gives it that very cinematic kind of classic feel.
Hmm.
They're kind of harkening back. It all takes place in the early 1900s, so it kind of has that kind of classic feel to it, which is neat. So that one had to make the list because it's one of my favorite Disney animated movies ever. It's loosely based on the work of Jules Verne, who's one of my favorite authors, and they just did a great job with it. Michael J. Fox, he's got one of those iconic voices that if you've seen
Yes.
Stuart Little, he does a great job in this role though, and it's a lot of fun. So have you seen that one?
No, I've barely
Okay.
heard of it.
Okay. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. It's on Disney Plus. You can check it out there. And I've
Okay.
got the Blu-ray here that includes the sequel, which I actually still have not watched because I'm just really worried it's not going to be as good. I know it's not going to be as good as the first one, but yeah, definitely worth checking out. Alrighty, well, that is it for nine number three. Bert, what do you have at number two?
I have got Crimson Tide at number two,
Nice.
what I think is the best sub movie ever made. Tony Scott directed, obviously. Gene Hackman and Denzel, and just this dynamic crossfire kind of dramatic battle, between these two
Right, right.
Hollywood heavyweights, and it's
Yeah,
it's a it's a pretty good thriller. You'd mentioned K-19.
yeah,
That has bits of potential mutiny in it, and it
yeah,
reminded me of Crimson Tide, and I thought this
sure.
must be like a common theme because I think
Mm,
um I mean, obviously it is a movie on a sub, or if it's in a boat, like it's one of the, a pretty dramatic thing that can happen, right, if it's a
right.
mutiny, so we shouldn't really be surprised. But anyway, it's really those two actors squaring off, and this sort of intense setting, and a lot at stake, and it doesn't go the way necessarily of like a Michael Bay film or something like that, or it
Right.
could, which is kind
Sure.
of a relief. They're focused
Right.
more on the performances and the story
Yep.
than explosions or all of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
and then the Tony Scott is always really good at getting sort of the technical jargon down, so it really
Mm,
feels like I don't know what it all means, and he doesn't really even always explain it, but I'm fine with
right.
that because I get what's going on, and it just
Yeah,
adds to the sort of the realism and the drama, right?
definitely.
That and the score, I've said before, it's got one of my favorite all time themes
Mm,
in the score by
hmm.
Hans Zimmer. So yeah, I just it's just a really claustrophobic, terrific little thriller.
Yeah, great. Yeah, like I mentioned before, I really need to rewatch it. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember really liking it. Two of my favorite actors, going head to head is just always fun to watch. And yeah, Mr. Scott is a consummate professional. We did a Ridley and Tony Scott podcast just a few weeks ago that people can check out on the channel right now, where we discuss that movie a little bit further. It's a great pick. Okay, on to my number two. It is, of course, I'm wearing the shirt. It was inevitable. It was Aquaman, of course.
Oh,
Aquaman,
okay.
the DC film starring Jason Momoa, who I think is just inspired casting. He's one of these actors that I would have never guessed because this is how he looks in the comics, right? He's like this, pristine, kind of, cool, white,
Clean
blonde
cut.
haired, clean cut guy. Yeah,
Ah,
white
gotcha.
hair, blonde haired guy. So picking Jason Momoa was just such an outside the box choice. But that's Snyder. I mean,
I didn't know that.
Snyder's casting is so different and so unique. Not exactly what you're expecting always. That he went through the same thing when he cast Ben Affleck as Batman. You're like, what? And then of course he ends up being one of
Yes.
the best Batmans ever. So
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's pretty neat to see Momoa take on this role. And the supporting cast is great. Patrick Wilson is an actor I really like from my home state of Florida. Yahya Abdul Mateen II, who has a larger role in the sequel as Black Manta. Then, of course, I've got Willem Dafoe, Nicole Kidman, Dolph Lundgren, Tamara Morrison, just some really great actors. There's some great actors that do voice-over work here as well as some of the creatures, including John Rhys Davies, who many know as Gimli from Lord of the Rings. I know him as Sala from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Julie Andrews. Julie Andrews, Mary Poppins herself, plays the Carathan, this huge underwater sea creature, which is kind of crazy that she agreed to do it. I don't know why, but
Did she have
I
to
love it.
audition, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure she no, she didn't definitely didn't have to audition. No, but it's just fun. This movie's just kind of bonkers, it's just kind of
Yeah, yeah,
crazy. It's one of these super colorful, wacky comic book movies. Feels more to me like a comic book movie than any other comic book movie almost, because it's just the color, the vibrant kind of the locations they go to, the action sequences are all big and just bombastic. The score adds to that kind of big epic feeling. It's very mythological. It's all about, thrones and bloodlines and all this stuff. So it's just a big movie. James Wan took it on. It's by far his biggest movie. He had made, a lot of small kind of horror films, Conjuring, Insidious. He
oh
did one
yeah,
that I like called Malignant. But he had also
oh
done
yeah.
Furious 7. So he did
Mm.
jump over to the Fast and Furious franchise for one of the best Fast and Furious movies, the seventh film. And then he got to do this, which, there's a little bit of horror in there. There's the trench sequence on the boat where all the creatures come and attack them, which is
Yeah.
kind of a fun moment in the movie. But man, he just really, I think, did a great job, shooting the action, shooting, again, a lot of it's on location, which I really am a big fan of. There's some great transition shots. Even the opening logos are all like underwater and it looks cool. It's just a really, I think, a well thought out movie. It's a movie that they obviously spent a lot of money on. It's $200 million. And it's all on screen. For me, the effects are pretty much seamless throughout, which is incredible because there's a lot of effects in this movie. They didn't actually shoot it underwater, surprisingly enough. Most of it was on a set with green screen, but it's just to me, it was very convincing. The looking, from a visual standpoint, it's just really well done. Fight choreography is really good. Some great oneers. Don Burgess was the director of photography. I think he's a really talented guy. He shot a lot of movies with J.J. Abrams. Rupert Gregson Williams, as I mentioned, did the score. I like that it's one of these big comic book movies set in the DC, now known as the DCEU, the kind of Zack Snyderverse, but it really feels self-contained. And it's not really trying to copy Snyder's style, but yet it feels like it's still a part of that universe. I think again, because
Yeah.
the continuity with Jason Momoa's characterization of Aquaman, they do briefly reference Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it's very much its own story. You can enjoy it on its own without having seen any of the other ones or without having to go and see the next one, which I feel like has kind of become a problem with a lot of these comic book films. But
Mm.
um, yeah, it's just really well done on every level. It's just a fun movie that I can watch anytime. I've probably watched it more than most comic book movies of recent years just because I have a good time watching it. There's a couple others I wanted to mention that are similar. One is an animated film called Throne of Atlantis, which is a very similar storyline, which involves more of the Justice League, though Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman are all in
Oh,
this movie. So it's kind of an interesting version of it. And then the animated Justice League series, which is one of my favorite animated series of all time, there's a whole episode arc called The Enemy Below, which is all about Aquaman and his brother
oh,
Orm and all that. So those are both well worth watching if you like Aquaman a lot. Those are kind of some other stories you can go and seek out. But no, this is a huge movie. It was a huge hit, over $1 billion, one of the biggest DC movies
mm.
ever. And so obviously a lot of people really liked it. But a lot of people didn't like it. And I know, Bert, you're not a huge fan of Aquaman. But I know you've at least seen it. You haven't seen the sequel yet either.
No, I haven't seen
Um,
the sequel.
yeah, I'm wondering if you'll like that one better. It's a little bit more self-contained, a little smaller.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. I don't know. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it eventually. But what do you
Yeah.
think of Aquaman, the first
Yeah.
Aquaman movie?
Well, it's been a bit of a journey. Like I find I don't do this intentionally, but with Zack Snyder films, I just feel like they're better on subsequent viewings.
Hmm,
Like that was definitely the case with Man of Steel. I
sure.
didn't remember even thinking it was anything special, and now it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So I mean,
Right.
it was come a long way in that one, and
Yeah.
I feel the same way with Rebel Moon. Like I'm like, okay, so the next the director
Right.
Scott's gonna be the what's gonna put it over the top.
Sure.
So with Aquaman, I really I mean, not that Aquaman was Zack Snyder's, but it was the casting,
Right.
obviously. That's
Sure.
what I
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of alluding to.
Hmm.
But so I didn't really like Aquaman at all the first
Hmm.
time I saw it. And I mean, honestly, I was probably checking my phone and stuff during it. I'm just guessing. It's been a while now, but So then the second time I watched it, I specifically just stayed focused on it and
Mm,
tried to see what, what's good about this film. And I actually was quite surprised. The visuals are very good.
yeah.
There's innumerable sets. I mean,
Oh
there just
yeah.
so many locations that they go to
Right.
here. So I mean, that's impressive. I mean, they could
Yeah.
set up in one spot and just say, well, there's your set. Some
Right.
films just try to overachieve and do, multiple locations. So that's
Yeah.
impressive. And a lot of great camera angles.
Hmm.
I thought great shot setups. I like the color palette. The stunts are very impressive.
Yep.
Costumes too, and then yeah, the score. I noticed the score being particularly good. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, as long as I think my expectations the second time were this isn't trying to be like Man of Steel or something that's
Yeah.
ultra serious.
Right.
It's based on a comic book, so
Right.
I'm at 3 stars on it, and I thought it
Okay.
was pretty good. Like I'd watch it again, actually. So I was a little too harsh on it the first time.
Gotcha. Great. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, it's always good to rewatch stuff. Even if you didn't like it the first time, you may come away with a different point of view. So yeah, that's great. Okay, we're on to our number one favorite underwater movies. Bert, what do you got at your number one spot?
The Abyss is my number one.
Nice.
Lives were risked in this
Yeah.
movie.
Oh yeah, big time.
And I just feel like as far as technical challenges, this has to be. I mean, James Cameron almost makes it harder than it needs to be because there's other ways you could have made the Abyss. You could have done the
Sure.
same thing that all these other movies we talked about did, which
Hmm.
is fake it, right?
Yeah.
And but and then this is what I like so much about James Cameron, just like when he says, I'm gonna make a movie about the Titanic, and then the
Mm.
studio execs are probably like, okay, miniatures and all that. And he's like, no, no, I'm not doing that. We're making the whole ship.
Right. Right.
He made like a 3/4 scale, but and that's what
Yeah.
I love about this. He filmed the Abyss in an actual giant water tank.
Right.
It really was risky, and
Yeah.
I've watched some of the behind the scenes things. I mean, some of the actors weren't too happy about what they were put through, just like with Titanic and probably
Sure.
every Cameron film. He's not
Right.
really about the actor's comfort. That's
No.
secondary.
Right.
Maybe Spielberg probably cares about the actor's comfort,
Yes.
but so in any case, yeah, the script is just kind of okay here, but it's Ed Harris and Mastrantonio that really kind of make this. Their performances are really, really great. They have a
Mm,
great chemistry. And then on top of that, you have this setting, and it just feels so authentic because it really is real water, and you can tell.
mhm.
And there's some really emotional scenes.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the stuff with the aliens is probably my like least interest. This is like the least interesting part of the film,
Sure. Yeah.
and then I wanted to talk about my theatrical experience with this because
Mm,
I did see this in the theater way back, and I walked out
mm,
thinking, that was okay. I'm not really sure what Cameron was trying to do with this film,
right.
but it was pretty neat, some pretty cool effects. But the theatrical version leaves out the whole
Oh,
explanation of why the aliens are down there, right?
yes. Yes.
And so years later, like probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years later, I got my hands on the director's cut.
Mm,
And then finally I was like, well, this all makes it make sense. And then so it
right.
became, one of my favorite films
Yeah.
because it actually explains. I don't know if Cameron back then they said we're not doing a 2.5 hour film or something,
Mm, right.
probably, was what
Yeah.
it was. I'm sure,
Hmm. Yep.
but that totally explains the whole point of the movie. And then you can
Yeah.
kind of accept it as an actual film and then appreciate, the acting and the set and all this other kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
so in any case, uh, that it's one other thing I want to mention too is the breathing liquid thing,
Yeah.
where they do that. Apparently, that's a real thing.
Oh,
I don't know if a human's actually done it,
okay.
but they actually did successfully do that on a mouse or a rat, one of
Oh,
the two.
huh.
And so in the film, you see Ed Harris's helmet fill with fluid. He pretends to breathe it, so that's active.
Right. Right.
But apparently, you can actually do that. It's more of a theory, though. It's only been tested on small rodents.
Right.
So I just thought I'd throw that in. But in any
Yeah.
case, yeah, I mean, this is just because of the astounding effort put in and and the acting and the effects. It's just been one that I've just enjoyed immensely over the years, and so I had to put that at number one.
Yeah. It's a good pick. It's a good pick. It, you know, you're mentioning about the director's cut and, you know, them probably wanting a shorter version. Uh, this is before Cameron had his clout, you know. I mean, he hadn't made Titanic yet and
or
become
even
the most
Terminator 2.
successful director ever. Yeah,
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 before Terminator 2 as well. Yeah,
yeah, right.
exactly. So yeah, he's still kind of a, I guess, an up and comer at this point in his career, and so they probably didn't allow him to have as much creative control as obviously he has now. He can make Avatar, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They'll pay for all of it, and it doesn't matter how much it makes, even though they'll all make $1
What it
billion
costs.
dollars. Right, exactly.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's cool to see that he got to see his vision realized. I always am a huge fan of that when directors get to do that. Um, this might be my least favorite James Cameron movie, but
Oh, really?
that's not saying a lot because all his movies are so good that
Hmm.
even his least good one is still good, you know? So it's still a movie I like a lot. Like you said, Ed Harris's performance is fantastic. The visuals are great. Just such a unique movie. Like you're saying, script isn't like, you know, best script ever. It's not like, you know, super impactful necessarily, but there are some, as you alluded to, some emotional moments that really work well. So yeah, the acting really is good. I feel like his movies, it's like through the crucible the actors have to go through, they end up giving
Hmm.
great performances. That kind of is how some
Yeah.
directors work. Like they really just work their actors hard, and sometimes it makes them better. Sometimes it makes them buckle under pressure and leave the project. But
Right.
this time it really worked. So yeah, yeah, Abyss is a great pick.
Yeah, and I want to say the emotional scenes that are really really good have nothing to do with alien stuff, you know,
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
why I
It's
say
all the
that's
human
the best
relationships.
part.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a scene where Ed Harris is trying to revive Master Antonio, and
Mm,
he's performing like CPR,
yeah.
and he's like well, like I mean, you can like fracture ribs when you're
Oh
doing that.
yeah. Oh
And I'm
yeah.
looking at this and I'm like, he's actually like
Yeah.
pumping on her chest. And I'm
Right.
thinking it's a miracle that he didn't break one of her ribs.
Right.
And it's just wow, it's just all in performances by him. And Michael Bean is great in it too. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Yep, good pick. All right. We're on to my number one, which we're going back to 1954, celebrating its 70th anniversary this year. Perhaps my favorite of all of Disney's live action films. It is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Okay.
This, of course, based on the Jules Verne novel. As I said before, I'm a huge fan of him as an author. And this, to me, is the best adaptation of any of his work, which a lot of it has been adapted into film. This still, to me, is the gold standard. This is they did a great job adapting the story for the screen. Ruben Fleischer directed it. He directed a lot of kind of these fun kind of sci-fi adventure movies. Kirk Douglas stars with James Mason, Peter Lorre, and Paul Lucas. Film is 2 hours and 7 minutes long. Again, it's based on the novel, which was written in 1870. So gives you an idea of how kind of forward-thinking Jules Verne was.
Yeah.
He's kind of an incredible mind. Photographed in Technicolor, one of the first films photographed in CinemaScope, which is the widescreen format. Also, the first to be released by Buena Vista Pictures, which is Disney's company. It won 2 Oscars for art direction and special effects. Was also nominated for best editing. So this was a big hit. I mean, this was, you know, we kind of look back on it as kind of quaint and kind of a you know, children's film, but this was, it garnered a lot of attention and a lot of, you know, kind of prestige around it, which, you know, is really not surprising considering Walt Disney himself was very involved and he was a very
Oh,
innovative filmmaker. And so they just did a great job with again the effects, which it was nominated for, the art direction. The one I mentioned earlier, Atlantis, took a lot of cues from 20,000 Leagues. So kind of the design
okay.
of 20,000 Leagues is very apparent in Atlantis. They were kind of calling back
Okay.
to this movie with Atlantis. So watching them together is kind of fun. Um, so yeah, it's got that steampunk kind of aesthetic to it. It was a huge success. Budget of 28 million grossed, or I'm sorry, budget of 5 million grossed over 28 million. So a very big hit with audiences as well. It has a lot of memorable moments. There's a song, kind of a sea shanty that's sung in the middle of the movie called Whale of a Tale that Kirk Douglas sings. It's a lot of fun and very
Mm,
catchy and memorable. So it's got that kind of very kind of whimsical, fun feel to it.
mm,
Yet as the film progresses, it kind of gets more and more intense as kind of Captain Nemo, is hunting down this creature and the creature's attacking. And the squid attack in this movie is one of the all-time great kind of special effects sequences. It's still hailed as a really innovative and just well shot scene in the movie. So it's got a great mix of action and adventure, great characters. All the characters are constantly butting heads to another one of those movies where there's kind of constantly talk of like mutiny and we should take over the ship and that kind of thing. So
yeah, yeah,
there's that kind of element to it. Again, great music. I've talked a long time about a remake, which I think would be great if you can get
yeah.
the
You would
right
think.
filmmakers involved. They haven't done it yet. They've also talked about a prequel. They've talked about doing a sequel. Guys like McG were involved at one point. Sam
Hmm.
Worthington was going to star. David Fincher wanted to do one at one point with Brad Pitt. And most recently, James Mangold wanted to do it. Chris Hemsworth has been apparently courted as playing a main role in this as well. So there's been a lot of development recently. Disney Plus, of course, have been working on something. It's supposed to be a prequel series titled Nautilus, which is the title of the submarine in the film. So that's still in development. No movement on it. But I would really like to see a sequel or a remake or something. I think what they could do with it would be really cool. There's so much here to explore, particularly with Captain Nemo. He's a really interesting character, has an interesting backstory that I think could be pretty compelling. So, a great movie. Again, another one that the whole family can watch that I think is just so well done on every level and that holds up really well. It's of course no CGI, way back in the animatronic days and all that fun stuff. But there's a lot of underwater photography there that had to have been a challenge to pull off back then. And it
Yeah.
all looks great. There's the version on Disney Plus is a full 4K remaster.
Hmm.
So I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I need to see that one. I've never seen it. I got
Yeah,
a couple questions for you about it.
sure.
So during the attack that happens, is the sorry, is it did you say it's a squid or an
It is.
octopus?
It's a squid. Yeah.
It's a squid. Yeah. So do they use what do they use for that? Like puppetry or how did
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
guessing it's
Okay.
puppetry with some animatronics. It's all a real creature that you see kind of attach itself to the
Do they
ship.
oh
And
do they
I'm
use
sure
they
there
use some forced perspective
some
to
forced perspective, some
nice. Okay.
miniatures. I mean, they're
Uh-huh.
utilizing every tool in the box because there are
I gotta
some
check that
shots
out.
where there's live action actors on top of the ship fighting it, and you're just kind of seeing tentacles, and then it'll go, underwater, and there's a shot of it kind of attaching itself to the ship. So yeah, they used everything they could think of. Very,
Nice.
very innovative, very creative filmmaking.
Yeah. Yeah. Second question.
Mhm.
What and I know this was it was the title, isn't that right from Jules Verne's book?
Exactly. Yeah, his book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is a
Yeah.
direct adaptation of that book.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if, back in the 1800s, if they knew about the depths of the sea, but
Hmm.
20,000 leagues, I mean, that's
It's a lot.
60,000 miles. You go through the entire earth and come out the other side before you get to
Right.
60,000 miles, right? It's
Exactly.
like longer than the diameter of the earth.
Right.
So is there something else to that? Or is it just that they were just implying like it's just really deep?
Yeah, I think it's just a fun title. It's like what's a
Okay.
big number we
Okay.
could come up with to be kind of there's no specific dialogue in the movie that alludes to that or anything that I can
Okay.
recall at
I
least.
see. I
So
see.
yeah, I think it's
Okay.
just a big number, like, 1,000,000
It's
miles
deep.
under the water or whatever, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Alternate title, trust us, it's deep.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Just wondered.
All right, folks. Well, that is it for the latest podcast, episode 76 of the Real World Podcast, our favorite underwater movies. As I said, The Boys in the Boat is in theaters now. We got a reaction and review for that. We've got a reaction and review for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom on the channel as well. So check those out. Let us know what you thought. Let us know your favorite underwater movies as well. We'd love to have a conversation with you in the comments below. Bert, thanks again so much for joining me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it certainly was, and I'm dried off now. So
Oh, good, good, good. Glad to hear it. We will see you guys next time. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. And we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.